Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. Alongside the Zarda playbook, it's Emery Hunt, and I'm Tyler Merkovich. And today we will be bringing you your 2009 Southeastern Conference preview. And Emery, when you talk about SEC, you talk about speed, defense, leadership, and great coaching.
And the SEC is the best conference in all of college football. Any one of these 12 teams can beat any team in the country on any given time, any given Saturday.
Last year's national champions, the Urban Meyer-led Florida Gators, were impressive to run the table and win the BCS Conference Championship. Let's start off in the East. Of course, we have an East Division and a West Division. As you start out in the East, where the Gators reign supremacy, and of course, Tim Tebow.
Anytime you get a Heisman Trophy winner coming back for his senior season, that's a strong component of your team. Tim Tebow is one of the best players I've ever seen in college football history. And to have him back in that offense that averaged 45 points a game, that's going to be a big pickup. And I can only imagine he wants to go out on top as a senior.
Of course, they lose Percy Harvin and the other wide receiver. I can't think of his name now.
Murphy.
Yeah, Lewis Murphy. And but they bring in Andre DeBose, very highly touted wide receiver, and they still got the weapons, those two scat backs who are speedy. Chris Rainey, Jeff Dempsey. They have Emmanuel Moody, who's a smasher too. And of course, that offensive line stays in check. Phil Troutwine out. Everybody else back, led by Carl Johnson, the left tackle, and the twins, Marquise and Mike Pouncey.
One thing, you lose Percy Harvin, which was a dynamite playmaker, but Andre DeBose, 5'11", 175 with speed to burn. He's supposed to come in and take the place of Percy Harvin. And I'm interested to see him play because I hear he's real good. Seeing his highlight film in high school, awesome player, can score anywhere on the field. So he's going to be a fun part of that Florida funny gun offense. Not funny gun like Spurrier, but a different type of funny gun with Urban Meyer.
And that's how Percy Harvin came in thin, and then he bulked up.
And he
so
bulked
DeBose
up.
is going to have a pretty solid career at Florida. But Deontay Thompson, they also bring in, and Riley Cooper, who are big targets for Tebow. So you know that offense is going to be there. Aaron Hernandez also, he's a ridiculous tight end.
And David Nelson is 6'5" as well, too, another big target for Tim Tebow.
Defensive side of the ball, unbelievable. This is the most underrated part of the team, led by Brandon Spikes, of course, the leader at linebacker. And they lose two guys. This could be their only weakness on the whole team. It might be the defensive tackle spot. They lose Torrey Davis. They lose Javier Estapinan. And they bring in Omar Hunter, who was injured last year. So, but their linebackers make up for the lack of talent on the defensive tackle positions.
Anytime you have a player with the talent of Brandon Spikes, he can make up for anything. Any mistakes up front, he's an awesome player. You look at that secondary they have, Joe Hayden at corner, Major Wright out there at safety. He's an awesome player. You got backups like Will Hill, another good player. You also have, Carlos Dunlap on that defensive line. Awesome. So Florida's defense, they returned all 11 starters. Impressive.
A great defensive end trio of Jermaine Cunningham and Carlos Dunlap, both second-team SEC, and for Justin Trotto, who's also a force. But they bring in, let's talk about Jelani Jenkins, linebacker. They bring in also to help with that, and of course their secondary. Those backups, they could be not only starters at other schools, but studs at other schools. We're talking Will Hill,
right.
Monroe, and Wandy Pierre-Lewis. They're behind those four guys who are absolutely phenomenal. The secondary is ridiculous.
They gave up 12.9 points a game last year and 3.4 yards per carry for the opponent. So that's a strong defense. Look for more of the same with everybody returning and they want to get back to that championship game to leave. Those teams want to leave out with a third national championship.
I love Ahmad Black. He's one of the most underrated players. All those other guys get a lot of credit compared to him. But let's talk about their schedule. When you talk about, they got Georgia, of course, in Jacksonville, which is more of a home game for Florida. Now after Georgia started losing so much, I know they won 2 years ago, they're complaining about it, but it's in Jacksonville, and they're at LSU and at South Carolina, and they close out FSU. Do you see them get knocked off?
If they had an opportunity to get knocked off, there are two games on their schedule that worries me. Is the game October 10th at LSU, because that's a tough place to play. and the game in Jacksonville at Georgia. When Georgia is under the radar, that's the type of Georgia team you don't want to play. So those are two games that scare me. But really, I don't see Florida losing at all this season.
Urban Meyer, in his 5th year, speculation, he wants to go to his alma mater, Notre Dame. He should stay put because he's got it all in Gainesville. Speaking of Georgia, last year, disappointing year because of that brutal schedule. And you would figure after they lose guys like Matt Stafford, Noshawn Moreno, and those weapons, they still had it. They still were 10-3. They returned 15 starters. This is Mark Richt's 9th year, and he's got a senior quarterback in Joe Cox. And Georgia, when they're under the radar, they could make some noise. I like this team. Caleb King, their sophomore running back, he's going to replace Noshawn Moreno.
I like Joe Cox. Joe Cox is a 5th-year senior. He's coming into a situation like DJ Shockley did after David Green left. A guy that was highly touted coming out of high school, sat 4 years, played sparingly behind Green, but came in the senior and led Georgia to a SEC championship. So I like Joe Cox. He played on the team, a good high school team in South Carolina. So I really like Joe Cox. And Caleb King is a beast. I like Caleb King. He's going to do well. He has to improve his pass blocking, but this is a team, with that veteran offensive line. They started a young offensive line last year, so now these guys are more experienced. They're seasoned. This is a scary Georgia team. Be on the lookout for that true freshman running back with Sean Ely. That is a guy that could see a lot of playing time this year to help out King.
He's going to compete with King for running back, and they also brought in 2 true freshmen, Aaron Murray and Zach Mettenberg, to push Cox a little bit, but it's Cox's job right now. And talk about the receivers, A.J. Green, absolutely amazing talent at wide receiver. He also played basketball. He could go up and get it. And they bring in another freshman, Marlon Brown. They got Michael Moore, the senior, who's a little smaller. They got Tavares King, who's a redshirt freshman. And they got Israel Troop. So the receivers are there for Cox. Spread them out.
A.J. Green is on the verge. He reminds me a lot of Charles Rogers when he was at Michigan State. A wiry guy, but tightly wounded. Can jump up and get the ball and has speed to run away from defenders. I like A.J. Green. That's going to help Cox out a lot. And then true freshman guy, Marlon Brown, he's going to come in and do exceptionally well. He's another guy that can catch the ball with his hands. That's a key attribute for receivers. I like him as well, too.
Well, another part of their downfall were the injuries last year, and Trenton Sturdivant went down preseason. That guy was a stud. He redshirted. I believe he's a sophomore this year. He's back. And Vince Vance, who also went down, he's back. So their offensive line, when healthy, it could be a force.
Sturdivant is a veteran. That's a veteran group. Sturdivant is the best lineman they have, and he's back this year. It's a solid offense. It's a scary offense. This offense could surprise some this season.
And they bring in Orson Charles and another tight end who's highly touted. So they're getting the weapons all over the place on offense. Let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Led by Owens, defensive tackle, and Geno Atkins. These guys are very highly touted. And, of course, their linebacker who makes a lot of tackles, underrated guy, Rennie Curran.
8 starters returned off that defense last year. They were kind of young last year, but now they're more seasoned. Rennie Curran comes back at linebacker. Prince Miller, the cornerback, is another guy. He can also help out on special teams. You look at Geno Atkins, defensive tackle. Vastly underrated guy. He should break out even more this season. So I like their defensive line. And Rashard Jones, 5 interceptions, safety back there. Georgia always produces some good safeties in back half of that defense.
When they bring in Brandon Smith, the true freshman, to play corner, so the defense can be viable this year. And out of conference, they're at Oklahoma State. They got Arizona State all before week 4, and they play at Georgia Tech. So this is a pretty hard schedule when you talk about going out of conference. Then they got to deal with all these teams.
Well, you look at 2 years ago, they tried the Oklahoma State experiment. They came down to Georgia and got blown out. But I think they can go. I think Georgia can go up to Oklahoma State and beat Oklahoma State. That defense is something that Oklahoma State won't face in the Big 12. So this is something that poses a challenge for Oklahoma State. The biggest question I have on that schedule is LSU. They get LSU at home, and that's a tough game they have to play. And they also look at they will want to get revenge on Georgia Tech after what happened. They blew a big lead in that
It
game.
was like 2012 or something.
Right,
like that.
and it's like a little kid holding a 100-pound weight. It was only so much before it starts to slide, and boom, the bottom fell out. Russian attack just took over the second half, and Georgia got blown out.